Hello everyone and welcome to another video with me, 320 Sim Pilot. I'm a real-world airline pilot, and in today's video I'm going to take you through another challenging approach. It's been a while since we've done one of these, but this is a really exciting one, and it's one that I encourage you all to have a go at. It is the LDA approach into Tokyo's Haneda Airport on runway 22. Now, that might not sound very exciting, but it is an approach that involves a non-precision approach that will fly down a localizer path, and then in the last 1,000 feet before touchdown we'll make a big turn. It's about 50 degrees, over 50 degrees turn to land on the runway, so it's quite a major correction in the last few hundred feet before touchdown, and then we land on a short runway. And this is done regularly, every day this is being done if the weather's good enough for it, by long-haul heavy aircraft. It's really quite something to do in the real world. Today I'll be using the PMDG 777, but this will be applicable to any aircraft really. It just happens to be that I'll be in a Boeing. This will obviously work very well in the 787 as well, as it's essentially the same, but of course you can also end up flying this in your Airbus or your A350 or your A320, and it'll be similar in some respects. But the point is to show you the approach and some things that can go wrong with it. So we're going to start, we're just in a hold here, holding pattern, waiting to begin our approach, and I'll take you through the full setup. Don't worry if you don't know what a non-precision approach is or an LDA approach. I'll talk you through all of that as we go through the video. Right, let's jump in. So here we are on the flight deck. We are in the hold. We should be down at 7,000 feet exactly, so I'll just tell the airplane to do that, and that will head down. And we are sitting here at Kaiji. This is actually the departure waypoint, but I'm going to show you the full setup of the FMS for the arrival. Get to that checklist page. Okay, so as I said, this is the LDA approach onto runway 22 in Tokyo. So let me bring the charts up for you, which are here. Now, this is the approach we're going to fly. Tokyo, Japan, LDA, X-ray, runway 22. There's a few variations, X-ray, whiskey, but they're actually, it just changes the arrival point. So I'm on the north of the airfield right now, so I'm going to do the X-ray, but you can choose whichever you want. So first of all, we're going to go to departure arrival. Then I'm going to scroll through and choose the correct approach. Don't be fooled, it's not the localizer approach, because there are localizer only approaches. For example, here, this is just a localizer. You can see there is actually a full ILS fitted for this runway that's completely in line with the runway heading 222 degrees. But Tokyo doesn't like to use it. It's noise sensitive. You're flying right over the city there, and that's not ideal, obviously. So if the weather's good enough, and it doesn't have to be very good, just a cloud base of 1,500 feet, and then they can give you the LDA approach, which is much more common. They would, of course, normally try and land you northerly away from the city, so you come in over the water. But if the winds are too strong from the south, then you end up having to do this. So LDA, and we're going to go with, as I said, the X-ray coming in from the north. So scroll through, make sure you don't do a localizer, you don't do an RNAV or a VOR. We want the LDA, and as I said, X-ray 22. And you would also, of course, choose your star before that, but that will connect up as applicable from your flight plan. But we're doing the LDA X-ray 22, and the transition is datum. I'm going to start at this waypoint, datum. Datum, execute. And now you can see datum, and then there is the arrival. It moves through these waypoints, bonus, and then we'll start to descend at Bondo from 5,000 feet down. Now, like I say, LDA. What is an LDA? Why isn't it a localizer? So to give you the full definition, it's a localizer type directional aid. So it's if you have the localizer approach, but it's not in line with the runway more than 3 degrees out. So it is basically just a localizer, but it doesn't finish up lining up with the runway. As you can see on this chart, what actually happens is you'll fly down the localizer, and then you'll just end up at this point here. You'll be sitting away from the runway, which is over here, and you need to do a big turn to get to it. This is a 0.1 mile from its own DME, but that doesn't mean it's 1 mile from the runway. But it's not far off. Although actually, no, it is far off. It's 3.8 miles from the runway. There you go. So yeah, it's all a bit odd. However, we will see how to do it today. It's actually quite straightforward to fly, and it's a good bit of fun. Worth trying, definitely. So other features of this approach are that the minima is 1,000 feet. You will reach that slightly after the missed approach point, which is a little bit awkward. But yeah, the 1.1 is here. If you do not make visual references by the missed approach point at D1.1, then you are going to have to make your missed approach. You cannot continue past it. We would make a left turn down to the runway, but if you go around, you make a right turn away from it, which is also quite unusual. Because of course, if you want to go around while you're down here, then it could get a little bit difficult. You'll need to speak to air traffic control pretty quickly to get guidance on which way where they want you to go. But anyway, let's assume we're going to make the approach and make our landing in one go. For now, for this video. So yeah, we're going to simply arrive here and we'll be at this Bondo point at 5,000 feet and we'll fly down the localizer and the approach. Now, it's only a localizer, there's no glide path, it's not the full ILS, so how are we going to fly it? What mode will we use? Well, in an Airbus, you would use final lap, so you would effectively have the airplane control your lateral and vertical profile for you, or you may even, in modern Airbuses, start to move on to things like the FLS. In the 787, we would choose a mode called IAN, which is Integrated Approach Navigation. That offers a similar thing to FLS in the Airbus, where it will simply fly it like an ILS. But we're in the 777 today, so we're a bit more like an older Airbus. The older generation, the 737, the 777, the A320 CO without any upgrades. So what are we going to do? Well, you've got lots of options actually. Boeing gives us quite a few options, even in the 777. So for today's video, what I'm going to do is fly it in localizer and VNAV. We have so many options, it's really fantastic. I'll fly it in localizer, so the airplane will fly along this localizer signal straight towards this point. And I'll use VNAV to fly the vertical profile. Otherwise, you'll have to use vertical speed and do it yourself, or flight path vector. Which I can't really see the advantage of. I think VNAV will be good. So that's what I'm going to use today, and that way the airplane will effectively fly down this on its own. The key thing is, if you fly this in LNAV, passing this missed approach point here, the airplane would just fly the go around. It would just carry on up on the missed approach, and you actually see that if we go to plan here, and then we go to our flight plan, and you can step through, you'll see it. Look at this. There's the approach. And there's the missed approach, you see. So here's the final MX22 is this point here. And then we need to visually fly the aircraft, left turn round and land on that runway there, 22. However, the airplane, if we don't and we're in LNAV, will just fly this pink line up on the missed approach, as you would want it to. So to do this, what's going to happen is we're going to disconnect the autopilot around here before we begin the approach. Before we make the visual maneuver, disconnect the autopilot, I'll turn off the flight directors, we'll leave the auto throttle in speed mode, and I will hand fly this final turn, and I'll talk about that as we do it. So there we go. This is the approach we're going to fly. 5,000 feet, we'll be in LNAV, I'll arm the localizer like normal, and let the airplane intercept the localizer, and then before Bondo, we'll make sure we're at 5,000 feet, and I'll press VNAV path, or press VNAV, and that will put it into VNAV path. I will lower the altitude in this window to the minimums, which is going to be today 1,000 feet, and that way the airplane will then begin its descent at Bondo and fly down. We'll configure the aircraft fully, so I'll arrive at Bondo nice and slow. We'll be at least flap 5, maybe even flap 15, and as soon as we start down, we'll just lower all the landing gear and the rest of the flaps of the airplane stable. You want a nice stable approach early on. You don't want to have high workload late on in this process because there's quite a lot to do. And then we'll fly down this approach. We won't fly it like this. This has a level segment. We won't do that. We'll continue down at a steady angle. And you can actually see that is coded in here. It will take us from the point Bondo at 3.25 degrees down to MX22 at 1,000 feet. So it's prepared to do a continuous descent, which is the modern way. You don't fly like this very often these days with this level segment. So down we'll go, and then hopefully we'll be visual at 1.1. By that point, we'll have disconnected the autopilot, turned off the flight directors, and we'll make a gentle left turn. Key things about the left turn are we need to continue the descent. Don't pull up or pull away from the runway. It looks very odd, but we need to just keep the aircraft descending, and we need to begin the turn at a sensible point. So you don't need to turn straight away. A nice gentle turn or a bit of a pause and then a gentle turn will work. It's very easy on this approach not to see the runway. This is one of the reasons it's quite as challenging as it is, especially if you've not been before. So this runway is hidden, it's quite short, and it's behind a load of taxiways and tarmac and other runways. So usually you'll get to about here and this runway will look very tempting, and they actually issue guidance on this not to confuse it because it looks like this is the runway you might be aiming for. There's also a cross taxiway here that looks like that could be a bit of tarmac you're aiming for. It's surprising. You just have to keep going around this turn, and one help we have is the navigation display does show us our runway on there. So you'll keep around the turn, and it's quite a big turn. Like I say, you're looking at almost 50 degrees, and then we'll be lined up with our runway 22 and we'll land hopefully. So keep the turn going, keep the descent going, and use the navigation display to help us line up. That's going to be the trick for this turn, and again I'll talk about it as we get there. There is actually a visual guidance here which shows you that in front of you should see the bridge and the wind power plant, and then you make a left turn. I've got to say, I don't think these are quite as obvious as this chart might imply, but you can see more importantly, this lead in to the runway, sort of a bit of gantry out in the water with the approach lights on. That's the big giveaway. It's there. A little harder to see in Microsoft Flight Simulator, certainly. So that's the approach, and that's the brief for what we're going to do. Let us just set up the aircraft. It's going to be an auto brake 4 landing because it's a short runway, and I'm going to land flap 30. So I'll go to init ref, index, approach, and we'll take the flap 30 speeds, and that will be how we'll land there. And then I'm going to set the airplane to fly direct to the waypoint of Datum, which is the start of our approach, and we want to arrive at Datum at 5,000 feet. So we're going to start our descent down to 5,000 feet. We'll do that in vertical speed. Now we're flying a 777 today. Like I said, if you were doing this in an Airbus or even the 787, there are approach methods that would mean you wouldn't have to use VNAV, LNAV. You can actually do it slightly easier in FLS or Ian, which would basically make it look like an ILS, and you can fly it in the same way. This is only marginally different in that we'll have to set the minimums in the altitude window as we start down that glide slope, but it will all be very clear on the PFD, and I'll talk about it as we go. So the key thing is we want to start 5,000 feet at Datum, and I'll need to bring the speed back. In Boeing aircraft, it's or certainly in the 777 and 787, it's quite a good idea to, once you start putting the flap out, to open the speed window if you are in VNAV, because I could of course put this into VNAV right now, and it will try and regain all the profiles, but yeah, I want to be level at 5,000, so I'm going to force it down in a more basic mode, vertical speed, and I'll keep the speed back at 220 for now. We'll run the descent checklist. So recall is checked, there's nothing wrong with the airplane today, which is good. There's no notes. Auto brake, we're going 4. Landing data, we've got VREF 30, 133, and the minimums. Good luck to us. It's always a nightmare setting this. We want to set 1,000 feet as the minimums, because that is yeah, where we need to see the runway by. That's why this approach will only be used if the cloud base is significant enough. You know, it's got to be a fair bit above 1,000 feet. You don't want airplanes going around from this approach, because it will defeat the purpose of using it at all. Because like I say, the main reason for this is to avoid flying over the city. And it's quite amazing. You see the size of airplane and the spacing on them doing this approach. It's quite amazing. Very close together, very busy airport. Right, well, we're going up and down on the minimums, which is the standard way this dial works. There we go, 1,000, and the approach briefing is complete. That's the descent check is complete. And next is the approach checklist, which is altimeters on 29 at 902. Tokyo uses both QNH and inches unusually, so you could have either. Now you can see the VNAV path, so the airplane has actually drawn that 3.25 degree glide path out from Bondo, so it actually wants us to be higher here. But we're not going to worry about that. We're going to start at 5,000 nice and controlled. I would have done this in the 787, this video, because it makes it so easy through the heads-up display, and yeah, it's fantastic. But I thought it would be quite good to bring the C-3PO 777 in as well. Couldn't resist this livery. Now you can see here, this is a very congested area. You wouldn't actually fly. We're getting down to 5,000 feet and flying level. You'd try to avoid that in real life, of course, but this is just for the sake of this video. Just because the engines, as you can hear, will spool up once you get down and level off, and it's not what you want to do right over a busy area, because of course everyone down there has to listen to it. Right, it's time we jump back into the flight deck and get going, so let's slow down. So let's go to flap 1, and then I'll bring the speed back. We're at 5,000 feet, and like I said, I'm going to use localizer and VNAV. So there's flap 1, I can go straight to flap 5 and select flap 5 speed. I remember I said I don't want to start down the approach too fast, because this is a 3.25 degree slope, so we need to make sure that we have the energy back and under control before we get there. You can see the VNAV path coming down from above. So we're making the turn now towards the localizer. I'm going to arm it. Oh, not like that. I'm going to arm the localizer. And now this white diamond is what the airplane will intercept. A little bit turbulent here as we come over the corner. You can see there is our runway. This is 3-4. That's where I took off from for today's video. It wouldn't normally be showing up. So this white line here is the one we're going to turn onto. That is the extended 10th line of our landing runway. There's our VNAV path. It's met us at 5,000 feet. Remember, we start our descent from Bondo. There's lock, so we're now on the localizer, and I'm going to press VNAV. It's gone into VNAV path, but it will not descend because we have the altitude window here. So I need to wind this down in auto mode to our minimums, which luckily today happens to just be 1,000 feet, so pretty straightforward. Let's go flat 15. It's getting quite lumpy here, isn't it? Flat 15. And they'll open the speed window, because when you press VNAV, it will close the speed window, so the airplane will take over, and you don't want that. You want to make sure you're definitely in control of the speed. It's not quite like an Airbus where it will come back to the correct flap speed, so it's worth doing it yourself. Right, we're now reaching the point Bondo, so the airplane will start down from 5,000 feet here. If you watch carefully, we'll see it all happen in just a moment. Remember, you must set the 1,000 feet in the window, otherwise the airplane cannot start down. There it goes. So it's going to lower the nose, and I'm going to turn on the flight path vector. If you're on the Airbus, that will be the bird. This way I can see the angle that the airplane is flying, but also as I start my turn, it'll be very obvious what descent angle I'm flying, so quite handy to have. So here we are, 160 knots, descending 4,600 feet down on the localizer. So we're doing well. If I open up the charts, I think I can put us on it with that. There we go, and we're starting down. Great stuff. So I'll just move the charts out the way, because now the last thing we need to know is that the go-around altitude was 4,000 feet. So remember, when you're flying a VNAV approach in the Boeing, we need to get at least 300 feet below the missed approach altitude so we can then set it. So once we're at 3,700 feet, I can put in that 4,000 feet in the window. You have to wait until that point, otherwise the airplane will level off, and you don't want that at all. Good. What was the last checklist we're going to do? It'll be the landing checklist, so we'll configure the airplane shortly. In fact, let's get the airplane configured now. There's no point us spending too much energy now. We want to get this right to this next stage, so that is really important for us. Absolutely fantastic livery there, love it. So let's go gear down. Flaps 20. And we'll arm that speed brake for landing. And I'll bring the speed back to the flap 20 speed. We're now at 3,400 feet, so I can set that missed approach altitude in the window. 4,000 feet ready to go. And you'll see the airplane carries on in VNAV because we were far enough away. Good, final stage then. We'll go flap 30 for our landing. And now I can bring the speed back to VREF plus 5, so that goes in the window. 138 today, quite slow. Slower speeds, the 787 comes in a bit faster than this. Doesn't have as big flaps. The flaps on this airplane are pretty good, pretty impressive. Let me just try and show you. There we go, it's a better view. Awesome. Takes me right back to FS 2002 when we fly the triple in flight sim. It was one of the included airliners in that simulator. Good, right, so before you know it, we're going to be there, so we need to think about the next step. We're looking out for the runway. Well, remember, that runway looks very tempting. That's not it. And this is where this approach gets really interesting. You sit here and you see this line, you see the line there, and you go, well, there's the runway. No, that's too close in. We wouldn't make that now. We're too high. You can see we're 4 whites on the Pappies. But this is a cool airport. You've got this runway, a bridge that airplanes taxi over to get to it. Then you have the terminal buildings, and here's the 3-4 left and right, the main 2 departure runways. There is that taxiway I was telling you about. You can see it from here. That looks a bit like a runway. You look down here and you think, oh yeah, that's at that angle, but it's not. It is not this. It's an even sharper turn. Here's our runway. In real life, it's not as visible because there's buildings here. It's actually, like I say, a gantry sticks out into the water here. So I might try and get some scenery for this airport. But yeah, can you believe it? That's the runway we're landing on over there. Not that one, because you can see we whizzed past it, and that is not a runway. That's the taxiway. Now, we're in localizer, so this time the airplane will just keep flying towards the localizer and then it will just give up. If you're in LNAV, it will fly this pink line, so at some point we need to take over. I'm going to let the airplane do the hard work for now though, and like I say, I've got the flight path vector available to me because I think it's going to be particularly useful, because this is a strange picture. You're just descending in towards the city in your 777, and it is, yeah, not what we normally see, is it? Really cool, and airplanes of this size do this every day, like I say. So I'm going to leave the auto throttle in, and I'm going to disconnect the autopilot, and that way the airplane will stay in speed mode and it will fly that speed for me, which relieves some of the workload for me. 777 also helps that it has obviously fly-by-wire correcting for trim problems, things like that. Right, let's get ready then. So autopilot off, and we need to turn the flight directors off. They're not going to give us any useful guidance for this turn because, as we can see, nothing's coded. And now I'm going to zoom right in on the range on the navigation display because, watch this, keeping the same rate of descent, about 900, maybe a little bit strong. We'll just back it off to 750. There's the runway. There's the gantry coming into view now. So I'm doing a gentle turn. The pappies will start to come into view. We're a little bit low, so I'll keep it at 600, 550 feet per minute. But look at this dashed line. I can just line this up with the center line to know I'm going to be there. But there's one more thing. The wind's from the left, so I don't want to get blown through. So I need to keep the turn going because the nose needs to actually go left of the center line, but otherwise we'll be blown through. So you need to account for this wind vector, which you can see here on the navigation display. So use that white line as you turn it onto that center line like I've done here. And then just be aware, let's not level off, let's keep it descending. You can see 2 whites, 2 reds. But now I'm pointing down the runway, but I'm not actually flying at it. I'm drifting to the right still. I can see that because the flight path vector is off to the right and my white track line is off to the right. So I'm going to bring the nose through the center line to here. And now the white track line is lined up with the runway and the flight path vector, well, it doesn't really matter now. We can just see we're drifting to the left, sorry, to the right. You would, of course, do your landing checklist, which your co-pilot would have done there. So 2 whites, 2 reds, keep the same rate of descent, so keep that bird just above the 5-degree line, not as much as that, otherwise you can see we get high pretty quickly. And now we're landing on a short runway, so I'm going to go flap 30 and we've got maximum reverse. I'm keeping the nose of the airplane just left of the centre line, which is not uncommon in larger aircraft like the 777, because of course as we correct with the rudder, well, actually the cockpit will come round onto the centre line. If you're in a 320 you wouldn't need to do that. So 2 whites, 2 reds, keeping that rate of descent nice and steady. Getting ready, remembering it's max reverse. Wind from the left.
50, 30, 20, 10.
Bit of correction, and there's touchdown. Get the reverses out and keeping it safe with the ascent line. I'm not used to my chase plane setup. I think it's a little bit aggressive on the rudder, but there we go. I'm going to hold reverse until we get through to 60 knots, which is coming up now. So that'd be back to reverse idle. And then we'll get rid of the auto brake. Oof, that looked worse than I hope it felt. Yeah, my chase plane on the ground is quite aggressive. And I'm going to bring it to a stop. As you can see, runway gets used up very quickly here in these large aircraft, but it's no problem at all. Awesome. And we'll set the parking brake. So there we go, we've now made it down on one of the coolest approaches out there, I think, especially, like I say, for these large aircraft, the localizer LDA type approach for runway 22 at Haneda. It has an amazing visual aspect. You have the whole city of Tokyo sitting off to the side, which is really stunning and spectacular, and then you land on this short runway after a big visual turn. Not something we get to do very often. Absolutely brilliant fun. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed it. It will be different in some aircraft. Some Airbuses may have this coded, or some aircraft may have it coded where the autopilot can actually fly that final turn for you. But it's great fun to do it yourself. So I think this is a good way to do it if you want to have a bit of fun hand flying these magnificent aircraft, because they can do it and they are designed to do it. And in fact, they are better than older generation aeroplanes that didn't have the automation, because they're actually easier to hand fly as well, especially if you have the trimming compensation like you have on the 777 or the A320. That's it then. I hope you enjoyed this video, a little bit like back to my older style where we did a lot of tutorials, guides and flights. So I hope you've enjoyed that. There'll be more to come on the channel, so do please subscribe if you'd like to see those. Thank you so much for watching. Bye bye.